Well, thank you, Estrella, for joining us here today. Want to talk about your career and the award you recently won, which was the 2025 FWN 100 Award. Tell us a little bit about what it is first of all, but also what it meant to you personally to win that award.
Yeah, so the FWN stands for Filipina Women's Network. And this is an organization that has focused on bringing together a community of very influential, successful Filipino women who actually happen to be all over the world. They started in the US and then now it's a global award. So I was recognized for innovation and thought leadership. And in that category, my nominator discussed with them the work that I had done in the human capital space. And I, for a long time, decades now, really kind of been working with executives in organizations that are transforming or evolving. And I love that kind of work, business transformation. It's really what I do, but I happen to know a lot about people and organizations. And I started in technology, so if you kind of mix that in, it's like all the different levers that you use. But what's important to me, and in terms of the story that I've told there, is that my upbringing as a Filipino woman was always centered around compassion for people. And so in the work that I do, I always try to remember that this work is not just about economic success. It's really about creating community, creating an environment for people to live better.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. Early career or pre-career influences that you had and how that impacted your career choices and how you went forward in your career.
Yeah, so it's interesting. They're actually about to publish a book, and I submitted an abstract to write one of their chapters to talk a little bit about my experience. And it's kind of interesting now because I'm sort of ending my career in the corporate world, and I love reflecting. It's like I like learning. So when you reflect, it deepens the learning experience. But I think that first and foremost, I was brought up in a very Catholic country. And when you are Catholic, you think a lot about service to those who are in need. And so that's kind of foundational for me. And my family are also very enterprising on both sides. And so I grew up a lot around that, and it always made me curious about how things work, how business works, how technology. My grandfather was very into, he would always adopt the latest thing. Like at one point, he even, when there's telephones came out, the wireless telephones, he brought them with him to visit a client, thinking it would work all the way there, right? So he was ahead of his time, right? So I was always like very curious about how things could get better. And so I think I just really gravitated towards work where answers were not there yet. And so naturally, I studied technology. And then later, as I got involved in business, more and more, it was clear that it was human systems and organization that was kind of ever evolving with the changes in industry. So it's just been a great space for me to do that. Yet the values that I was raised in were always communities in terms of how I do my work.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. You recall, let's say, a particular moment in your career where you faced resistance, tokenism, things like that, where maybe you overcame, or how you overcame those kinds of things?
A lot. A lot. You can't, when you say tokenism, I mean, it's like I'm a walking, person of color, woman, right? So I did encounter a lot of it. And for me, while sometimes personally those situations hurt, like in a very deep emotional, it's unjust, right? So it hurts, but I was always focused on my own goals and desires and ambitions. And when I use the word ambition, I don't mean it in just for myself, but ambitions for the kind of impact I can create. And so I address them head on, not, the people who are doing it, but like in context of the goal. So as an example, when I was a management consultant, I was the lead on one aspect of the project that we were working on with a CFO who, and at that time I was young, I was like in my 20s, but I knew the most about this work, this analysis that we were doing. And the CFO, who was, of course, more up there in age, and this was in oil and gas, very, very male-dominated. He just refused to see me. He would not want to talk to me. Even when I met with him, he would not look me in the eye. So, but I was very concerned about being able to move forward on this work that we were doing and getting his agreement to do this. So I asked one of the people on our projects, who was an ex-CFO, to come meet with the CFO of this organization to help me present this information. And I said, Moss, I can give you all the information and I'll be there so that if there are questions, And I did care, right? But I didn't care that it was someone else speaking to my work because it was my work. And so we were able to move forward and help that company save lots of money.
Yeah. That's a great example. So in your role as the Chief People Officer at Cupertino Electric, what have been some of the key challenges you faced there, and how have you used your voice as a being Filipino woman to address them?
I paused because what's interesting about your question is my voice is a Filipino woman, and I don't really think about it that way. It's just my voice.
Yeah.
But part of who I am is being Filipino. So at Cupertino, this was such a great experience for me, and still is in a way. The timing of it, because Cupertino was really in this precipice of huge growth. They've been growing as an organization. When I joined them, they were a 50-year-old company. So they've been around a long time, and they were very well known in our market here in the Bay Area. But we were starting to forge into different geographic areas and also moving into different spaces like data center. They were already into data center, but they were still sort of early at that point. And then renewable energy infrastructure builds. And they were about just hitting the billion mark. But we were growing rapidly, and I was brought on to really help the organization continue to mature in the people space, because it's an organization that recognizes the business is really driven by people. So, but I've never been in that industry, and it's also an organization that has grown primarily by people who grew up in the organization. So I think more than my voice, it was my ear that I use, because it's really important, especially with someone like me at that point. I've had 4 decades of experience in human capital management, that I don't go in there assuming I know everything and I know the answer and I've done this before, 5 times before, right? It was important to understand where they were coming from, and to introduce changes and help come up with answers that was really well supported by the leaders in the organization. So I think it was really more about listening really well and presenting ideas and not solutions, and then engaging people in those ideas. And I loved all the things that emerged. That's why I thought they were innovative too, because I knew I had to build an ecosystem. That was kind of my idea, but that understanding what comes first and how they all work together was done in collaboration with the other leaders, the other executives.
Yeah, I love that answer. I mean, what you're really implying is just really good leadership skills, right? I mean, listening, applying your knowledge, iterating, working with people, curiosity, pulling it all together, and ultimately to help the organization get to where it needs to get in the framework that works for the organization, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Love that. So in reference to the award, you talked about lifting others as you rise. Was correct. What does that look like for you in concrete action?
Yeah, so it means to me as a leader, you talked a lot about leadership skills. One of the things that I think is so embedded in me is that I come from a family of educators. So yeah, they were enterprising, but they were also educators. Even my dad, who's a lawyer, also taught. So I just have this mindset of always teaching. So maybe some of my people who work for me may sometimes get tired. I build a lot of context. I explain things beyond, what's needed, because it empowers them to do more, actually, than what I may say, hey, go do this. But if I explain the context, I really believe that people who are smart and skilled and interested and motivated will rise to the occasion. So for me, one is in the work, doing a lot of teaching so that people are learning. I also am very interested in what people are interested for themselves in their careers or in their personal lives, in their personal growth. So I try to, when I select assignments or when I do things, make sure that I engage that kind of work that will have more meaning for people. So, and of course, in the corporate world, I've had a lot of people who had ambition, and it's just about helping them get to those levels of accountability and positions.
Right.
That
Yep.
they have.
How can leaders, especially those who don't come from marginalized backgrounds, show up better allies through mentorships, sponsorships, other pipeline type of things?
Yeah, I think it's really important to learn to connect with people as people, because it's what makes us all the same, right? And human societies are also by nature unjust. And so there's just a part of me that accepts that, and that also believes that it's really about constantly adjusting to make sure that we do help those that need help. So what I found is that, as an example, in trying to build a women's network in our organization, I was so surprised at how many men showed up in our launch activity, because men have daughters. Men care about the business, and it's like, if we only attract half of the working population to our organization, we're going to be losers, right?
Yeah.
So from a business context, they were interested in making sure that we get better at this. And from a personal perspective, all of them had women in their lives that they cared about. So I think that if all of us come into work inviting and engaging people in whatever way they can connect, it doesn't have to be about, well, you're not me, so you don't fully get me. Yeah. It's like you get some of me, and that's okay.
Awesome. This is my last question for you. Drawing on your own trajectory and lessons learned, what advice would you offer to aspiring leaders who resonate with your experience?
I would say nurture your own grit, right? Grit is necessary. for anyone who's aspiring to be anything, right? And but make it an expression of who you are, not copy me, copy you. It's like they're essences of you and everyone, so it's always observe, but do what feels right for yourself. And my most biggest learning moments was when I was trying not to be me. And it actually hurt the process. So I think it's like always be centered on who you really are, on what feels right, what's natural for you. And in the process of learning, not everything is natural, right? Because you're learning.
Yep.
But what I mean by this, it's still, it has to be something that you feel like it's calling you to meet, right? So it's like there's no easy formula. So it's something that you have to hone in shape as you go through the process. Because the journey is actually more important than the end result. I know, I sound like an old person. But that's so true. At the end, when I was young, it was like about, I gotta get here. And now as I look back, it's like,
you know, the joy from some of those milestones lasted maybe this much, but it was like reliving the experience and the highs and lows of those experiences kind of really what's the gem in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think to your answer there, and I sort of link it back to where we started about your authenticity really is what you were getting to there, and back to the values that you were taught as a little girl in the Philippines from your grandfather and people around you, and how those continue to be who you are. So it's sort of like know thyself, right, and who you are, and that's how you can show up and be authentic in your work, doing whatever you're doing. And
right, you just sparked something else, because I think others shape you, and so you should also be selective on who you're with and who you play with.
Yeah.
And I also learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
Right, like so you kind of, you learn from those around you. So surround yourself with people you want to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, model your behaviors.
That's why I'm at Connex.
Exactly. That's a perfect place to end. Thank you so much for being, a member of Connex for many years. And we've seen you at a number of these events. We're going to miss you coming to them in the future. Maybe you'll,
come visit every so often.
Exactly. But thank you for supporting us, and thank you for sitting down with me today.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Thank you.